Hello and welcome. I'm Asima Katauka and you're watching the Primetime Asia. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. China has confirmed that President Xi Jinping will meet with US President Donald Trump in Busan, South Korea tomorrow on the sidelines of the APEC summit to discuss bilateral relations and mutual interests, according to a Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson. The high-stakes meeting comes amid efforts to ease trade and strategic tensions between these two countries. China has warned that it absolutely will not rule out the use of force over Taiwan, marking a sharper stance than recent state media messages which promised peaceful reunification. The statement comes as Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen vowed to resist any advancement of unification. Air India CEO Campbell Wilson vowed to improve internal safety practices following the June crash that has killed 260 people, calling 2025 a challenging year for the airline. Wilson has stated that Air India is cooperating with investigators while grappling with delayed jet deliveries and airspace closures amid heightened India-Pakistan geopolitical tensions. The United States and South Korea have agreed to keep reciprocal tariffs at 15% after a preliminary deal earlier this year. Both countries will reduce tariffs on automobiles and auto parts from 25% to 15%. Former Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte has appealed the International Criminal Court decision to continue its case against him and has demanded his release. According to court documents, the appeal challenges last week's ICC ruling that it retains jurisdiction over Duterte's case despite the Philippines' withdrawal from the court in 2019. Bangladesh's exiled former leader Sheikh Hasina has warned that banning her Awami League party from next year's elections could deepen national divisions. She has accused the interim government of disenfranchising millions of her supporters after the party was barred under the Anti-Terrorism Act amid war crimes investigations. Israel's Defence Minister Israel Katz has warned that Hamas leaders, both political and military, will be targeted without immunity after recent Israeli airstrikes on Gaza. Katz has also banned Red Cross visits to Palestinian detainees under Israel's illegal combatants law amid ongoing ceasefire talks mediated by Qatar, Egypt, US, and Turkey. Israel has reinstated the Gaza ceasefire after carrying out a wave of airstrikes that has killed over 100 people and targeted dozens of militant sites, according to the Israeli Defense Forces. The IDF has also claimed its strikes eliminated 30 commanders in Gaza, while local hospitals and civil defense reported heavy civilian casualties, including 35 children. Now we start from Asia. Pakistan has issued its strongest warning yet to Afghanistan's Taliban regime after peace talks between the two neighbors broke down without agreement. Defence Minister Khawaja Asif has stated that Islamabad could completely obliterate the Taliban regime and push them back to the caves for hiding, claiming that Pakistan would not need to use more than a fraction of its military capabilities. The remarks have followed after the failure of negotiations in Istanbul, which was mediated by Turkey and Qatar, aimed at preventing further deadly clashes along the 2,600-kilometer border. Pakistan's information minister has stated the Afghan side deviated from the core issue, accusing Kabul of ruses and a blame game. Pakistan has stated that the Afghan Taliban is allowing the Pakistani Taliban to operate freely inside of Afghanistan and to launch cross-border attacks, which Afghanistan denies, and Afghanistan has yet to formally respond to Pakistan's latest threats. Now for this discussion, we welcome retired Major General G.G. Dwivedi. He's a defense analyst, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General, for joining us again. Good to see you. Thank you. Major General, looking at this, now this is a further escalation, and how might Pakistan's escalating rhetoric towards this situation, and also their claims of Pakistan would not have to use much of their military force to push Taliban back to hiding in caves. Is this just a rhetoric, or do they have such capabilities?
Well, Suma, firstly, always a pleasure to
Thank
be on
you.
the NewsX world.
Same.
Well, I think Pakistan's frustration is quite expected because when Taliban duo came to power in August 2021, Pakistan had three assumptions. Firstly, it will be able to control Afghanistan. Taliban will accept the Durand line. Taliban will also act against the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, the outfit which is causing fair amount of headache to Pakistan. And also, they thought that India will be out of Kabul. But unfortunately, none of these things have fructified. And therefore, Pakistan is actually deeply frustrated because they nurtured Taliban for almost 2 decades. And the talks that were held at Istanbul were expected that they will not make a headway because there is an immense distrust between the two sides. And there is no common meeting point because Taliban has not accepted the Durand line and they have denied that they are lending any support to Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. Now coming to the rhetorics. Well, Pakistan knows that it cannot fight Taliban because history vindicates that. Firstly, the British were booted out of Afghanistan in the 19th century. Then Russians also met the same fate in 1980s. And then Americans also had to exit in August 2021. So therefore, no one has been able to fight out Taliban, and Pakistan army doesn't have a chance because they are only boasting on the air power, but Taliban are very battle hardened and they will fight on the ground, and Pakistan army has no chance to face Taliban. And interestingly, Russia has offered their full support to Taliban and they have promised them the air defense systems. That's one area which Taliban lacks. Once they have the suitable air defense system, I think to the best of my understanding, Pakistan will come on the terms and negotiate with Taliban on the terms because Pakistan doesn't have the capacity to fight Taliban. And also they have number of other fronts. They are having problem in POK, they are having problem in Baltistan, and therefore how many fronts they can fight. And also Balai Pakistan is also active. So I don't think that Pakistan has the capacity to take on Taliban. I think they will come to terms, and this is just a rhetoric, Asuma.
Right. And building on that, do you think there is any push of blame, as even this year, as we saw in Pahalgam attack, Pakistan denied that it was done from their soil, and then this time too, within Pakistan's own soil, they are pushing the blame onto Afghanistan. Do you think Pakistan should or could face their own problems in their soil and make sure these kind of things does not happen in their soil, so that they don't have to put the blame onto their neighboring countries? And does this, if Afghanistan and Pakistan do not reach any agreement, does it affect India as well?
Well, first and foremost, Pakistan is getting the taste of its own medicine because its national policy is the proxy war, and they have nurtured number of outfits like Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Hizbul Mujahideen, and now they are actually in a serious problem because these outfits many times are not under anyone's control. And while they are facing Afghanistan, like Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan is not actually fully under control of Taliban. So therefore, Pakistan has always playing a blame game, and while the world knows that they are the epicenter of terrorism, they are the factories of terrorists, and they always resort to the blame game. Recently, the Financial Active Task Force have also warned Pakistan that they could again come back on the grey list as hitherto. So the point is that Pakistan nurtures terrorists, its policy is of the proxy war, and blame game is part of their culture. Well, the kind of tension that is going on between Afghanistan and Pakistan, well, really doesn't affect India because, in fact, it is to our advantage so that the Pakistan should feel the heat on the Western Front. But nonetheless, all I can say is that Pakistan is a nation which believes in terrorism, which orchestrated terrorism all over. This is the destabilizing factor, and they always pick on India as the cause of the trouble. But let me tell you, their troubles are their own creation, and they're paying the price for the follies and the terrorism that they have nurtured for all these years. I think now realization is coming, and Taliban, I think, are showing them the mirror. Asuma.
With that, I would like to thank Major General Gigi Dwivedi for always joining us and sharing that insight. Now we move on to South Korea. South Korea's presidential policy chief has stated that the new investment agreement with the United States will need approval from the National Assembly before it takes effect. He has emphasized that the deal is not expected to cause any immediate shock to domestic foreign exchange markets. Under the agreement, U.S. investments will be financed at each project milestone, and an umbrella special purpose company will be made to oversee these projects. The official has noted that the $20 billion annual investment cap differs from a similar deal the U.S. has with Japan. The fact sheet outlining the agreement is expected within 2 to 3 days, while U.S. Commerce Secretary Lutnick will head the investment committee to evaluate projects in South Korea. The policy chief described the trade deal as a breakthrough for improving the trade for Korean companies. Now for this discussion, we welcome Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Dr. Satoru, for joining us today. Good to see you. Dr. Satoru, now looking at this trade, how significant it will be for South Korea, and what's the difference with the deal that they have signed with Japan and with South Korea?
In case of Japan, the agreement has happened. After that, it has implemented. So only detail how to implement is the matter. In case of South Korea, they agreed in end of July this year. But after that, in the end of September, the South Korea start to say that it is impossible to do that. So that's why just now they need to agree. The amount of the money is, of course, the same, but how to implement, but in this case, a very long-term plan they are taking, because a huge amount of the investment South Korea cannot deal with, but they have already agreed in July, so they cannot say this is right or something problem. So that's why there is a cap that they can pay just now, and after that, in the long-term investments, they will pay something like that. Extending the deadline has happened. So this is completely different between Japan's case and South Korea's case. Japan's case is just detail is matter, but South Korea is can do or not is matter. So that's why completely different. But today, the US and South Korea agreed this. So this means that from now, this is a practical, feasible plan. And so it will really happen, I think.
And how might requiring National Assembly, Korean National Assembly, approval affect the timeline and implementation of this new US-South Korea agreement?
Because size is too big, I think. Compared with Japan's one is big, but Japan can deal with. In case of South Korea, this is impossible, South Korea said in the end of September, because size is too big. So they agreed, but the size was too big. After that, they start to say. So that's why that's not fair size when they agreed in July. But once they agreed, it is impossible to change the amount. So that's why the deadline itself will extend it, and step by step they will pay. So in total amount of the money is same, but deadlines extend means that a small amount of money they can prepare and continue to pay. That is possible. And in this case, such kind of the long-term plan, huge money, they cannot do that without support from the parliament, I think.
And lastly, Dr. Satoru, how could this creation of a special purpose company influence transparency and accountability in managing such a big joint investment?
Of course, in case of Japan, Japan has already identified which project they will invest. In this case, the US side want to decide themselves, but the Japan side also involve Japan side, and they negotiate and decide. So which company takes charge, how much money, this has decided just yesterday. But in case of South Korea, from now they need to talk, I think, so one by one. So of course, some of the projects are already identified, of course, but at the same time, in this case, because of the big, they need to avoid the corruption case or something like that. That's why the transparency is matter, I think.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Dr. Satoru Nagao for joining us and sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. U.S. President Donald Trump is on Asia trip, and he has talked on plethora of topics during the visit. While talking about various peace deals that U.S. has brokered under second Trump administration, U.S. President has reiterated his claims of brokering peace deal between India and Pakistan. After the Pahalgam terrorist attack in the month of April, India has launched a series of counterstrikes against the terrorist facilities in Pakistan that escalated into a conflict. After days of strikes, a ceasefire was agreed between India and Pakistan. U.S. President Donald Trump has since then claimed credit of brokering the ceasefire deal. They claim that Indian government has denied on several occasions. However, President Trump again reiterated his claim while appreciating his relationship with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Pakistani leaders, especially Field Marshal Asim Munir. Trump has stated that he used trade to settle the conflict. Let's listen in to what he has stated.
And Pakistan. So I'm doing a trade deal with India, and I have great respect and love. As you know, for Prime Minister Modi, we have a great relationship. Likewise, the Prime Minister of Pakistan is a great guy, and the Field Marshal, they have a Field Marshal. You know why he's a Field Marshal? He's a great fighter. He really is. He's a great guy, too. And so I know them all. And I'm reading that 7 planes were shot down. They're going at it, and they're really starting to go. And it's a big thing. These are 2 nuclear nations, and they're really going at it. And I called Prime Minister Modi. I said, we can't make a trade deal with you. No, we must make a trade deal. I said, no, we can't. You're starting a war with Pakistan. We're not going to do it. And then I called Pakistan. I said, we're not going to do trade with you because you're fighting with India. And, you know, 2 nuclear nations. And they said, no, you should let us fight. They both said that. You know, they're warring. They're strong people, I'll tell you what. Prime Minister Modi is the nicest looking guy. He says, and he looks like you'd like to have your father, like, he's a killer. He's tough as hell. No, we will fight. I said, whoa, this is the same man that I know. But after a little while, and they're good people, and after literally 2 days, they called up and they said, we understand, and they stopped fighting. How is that? Isn't that amazing? Now, you think Biden would have done that? I don't think so. Most people wouldn't have thought of it, but, you know, they wouldn't have thought of it. No, but here we are, we're doing deals. So you add an extra sentence.
Now for this discussion, we welcome back retired Major General G.G. Dwivedi. He's a defense analyst, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us again, Major General G.G. Dwivedi. Now looking at this, how credible are U.S. claims of brokering peace deal between India and Pakistan amid repeated denials from the Indian government, and why is Pakistan not denying it and playing along with U.S.? Major General G.T. Dwivedi,
Yeah.
yes, would you be able to, should I repeat my question here?
Yeah, actually, I didn't get your question. I'll appreciate if you can repeat
Yes.
it, please.
Yes. So I was asking, how credible are U.S.'s claims of brokering peace deal between India and Pakistan amid repeated denials from the Indian government? And why do you think Pakistan is not openly denying these claims?
Well, the point is that the peace deal between, or this, I would say, the ceasefire between India and Pakistan came about when the two armies, that is DGMOs, they had a talk over, and then it was decided between the two armies or the two DGMOs that this ceasefire should be agreed upon. And then the political leadership, they took the call and they went ahead with the ceasefire. But the point is that while President Trump has made repeated claims, but as far as India is concerned, India's position is concerned, this ceasefire was purely between the two countries. It was a bilateral, and there was no third party either intervention or facilitation. So therefore, that is the stated position of India. And we go by what is the India's position. When Pakistan want to, placate President Trump, they have nominated him for the Nobel Prize. Well, they have their own interest, and that's exactly what the Pakistan do, because they have the policy of servicing the interest of other countries, and they offer them to be used. Many times they also are misused, but that is upon them. But as far as India is concerned, the ceasefire was purely between the two countries, and there was no third party intervention, and that's his stated position. Asuma.
And do you think this could have any effect on the relationship between Washington and New Delhi and Washington and Islamabad?
Well, firstly, relations between India and America are very deep rooted. They have strategic convergence, we have strategic interest, and these relations have been built over a period of time. They are not transactional, they are far-sighted, and both the nations have a lot of commonality as far as the strategic perspectives are concerned, be it Indo-Pacific, be our value system. So therefore, I think these small irritants can always happen. Whereas American relations with Pakistan are very transactional because they have no deep-rooted strategic dimensions. They are just from some temporary interest, or I don't think they have any deep-rooted connotation as far as India is concerned. Well, I think there was certain amount of irritation, or I would say friction, because of the tariffs, but I think that is being resolved because both the sides are working on the tariffs and working on a trade deal. And also one of the areas which President Trump was very sensitive about, India buying oil from Russia, I think that purchases have also come down. We have increased our oil import from America, almost 1.5 lakh barrels per day. We are importing from America. So I think that gradually that convergence is coming in, and President Trump and Prime Minister Modi have been in conversation. They had two one-on-one talks as well. So I think then time to come, I have always maintained that this is a very temporary friction or temporary irritant. It will get resolved. But we have very deep-rooted relations, especially in defense, strategic issues, and our value system. So I think that in time to come, I am very confident that we will be able to resolve this trade and tariff issues, and relations will once again be on track. But as far as Pakistan is concerned, I think relations between America and Pakistan are very, very transactional, and they look at very short-term interest. But I think in the long-term perspective, America has a lot to gain and further the larger global agenda where India has a very important role to play, especially when you take on Indo-Pacific and this region as a stabilizing factor, and also furthering the large interest of the Americans at large. Suma.
With that, I would like to thank Major General Gigi Dwivedi for joining us as a defense analyst and sharing that insight throughout our topic. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. Myanmar's military junta has invited international media to cover its upcoming elections starting December 28th, despite a history of severe press censorship and intimidation since the 2021 coup. The Union Election Commission has stated that both local and foreign media will be allowed to cover the polls, but access will be scrutinized and approved by the junta-run Information Ministry. Many journalists remain skeptical, citing risks and the lack of independent coverage since the coup. Myanmar's media landscape has largely collapsed, with independent outlets shut, operating in exile, or moved to rebel-held areas. Rights groups argue the elections cannot be legitimate, pointing to the imprisonment of democratic leaders, dissolution of the National League for Democracy, and the criminalization of protests. ASEAN has also opted not to send observers following lobbying from human rights organizations. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Dr. Satoru, for staying with us. And now, why do you think Myanmar is suddenly softened or being open to allowing journalists to cover their upcoming elections?
When we check the purpose of this election, it is understandable because advertising the presence of the election itself is the purpose. This is not a fair election because Aung San Suu Kyi's party, which is the most popular party in Myanmar, cannot join. And area military junta holds election is safe area, which is no civil war, no fighting. This means that this is military junta's occupied area. So that's why this is election. Military junta can show the victory and legitimize their government as a election-backed government. But this election itself is not fair. So that's why the international community can easily to ignore the existence of the election because this is not fair election. So that's why the military junta want to invite the international media and try to make the news and show the presence of this election. And so there is an election. And their government, military junta, is indeed backed by people's support. That is, they want to show by exploiting the foreign media. So that is the reason. So, viewed from purpose, it is understandable. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. And lastly, how credible can this upcoming election be under military control and widespread media censorship still, and how should ASEAN and the wider international community respond to these elections?
Also, of course, each country has its interest. So this is not fair election, everyone knows that. But even if such kind of situation, supporting the government in Myanmar is beneficial or not is case-by-case basis. Each country has its interest. For example, in case of this Cambodia, when we check the election, is it fair? Indeed, Cambodia also the view from the international community, Cambodia election is not fair as many people believe. So view from this, if they said Myanmar's election is not fair, so how about your election? That is a matter. So that's why the case-by-case basis supporting the Myanmar is one of the possible scenario, which is they can get benefit. So this is a decision based on their interest. That's why in the ASEAN they cannot mention Myanmar's election as an integrated opinion because 11 members of the ASEAN. but each country has different opinions. That's its situation.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Dr. Satoru Nagao for always joining us and sharing that insight all the way from Tokyo. Now we move on to Bangladesh. Bangladesh's ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has stated that millions of supporters of Bangladesh's Awami League will boycott next year's national elections after the party was barred from contesting in the polls. Hasina has stated that she will not return to Bangladesh under any government formed after elections that exclude her party and plans to remain in India, where she fled in August 2024. The interim government, headed by Nobel Peace Laureate Muhammad Yunus, has governed Bangladesh since Hasina's ousting and has pledged to hold elections next February. Meanwhile, Sheikh Hasina has stated that the ban on the Awami League is not just only unjust, it is self-defeating. She has further added by stating that the next government must have electoral legitimacy, as millions of people support the Awami League, so as things stand and they will not vote. She has further concluded by stating that you cannot disenfranchise millions of people if you want a political system that works. And that's a wrap on NewsX Primetime Asia. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.